It is how wisdom defines our character. The difference that wisdom makes in our character. And wisdom can take many different shapes, many different forms. And as Brian was sharing with the kids about Job, one of the verses that I came across for Job is that when Job's friends are sharing with him and telling him how he has done wrong and that he is the source of all of his problems, he says, "Oh, that you would be quiet, that would be wisdom for you." You like that? You're going to remember that, aren't you? "Oh, that you would be quiet, that would be wisdom for you." What is wisdom? Think about that for a moment. What is wisdom? I think it can take many different forms. It can manifest itself in many different ways. But what is wisdom? And I have a question for you. Did you ever get into a project, and at the beginning, you tell yourself, "I know what I'm doing," and then shortly into the project, you realize you don't? Has that ever happened to anybody else? Mylan has never had that happen. For most of us, we have had at least one time in our life, probably multiple, where we really thought that we knew what we were doing, and so we launched into this venture only to realize that we had no clue what I was doing. And I was thinking back to the last time I can remember myself in this place. I was about 8 or 9. It's been a number of years. Seriously. It was a lot longer than that, or a lot shorter than that before I remember the last time. But the one I wanted to share, I was about 8 or 9. And it happened at the house that I grew up in. We had a nice front porch that we had enclosed, and we had 3 steps up to it, and the first 3 steps were the same. But that last step from the top step onto the porch was a very big step. And as a child, there were a number of times that I tripped going up that step. And to make it worse, we had a front screen door on there, and we had one of the aluminum thresholds on the bottom. You know what I mean? It was screwed to the cement, really was not going to come up. And I had tripped over that a number of times. And not only that, I had witnessed my parents trip over that a number of times. And so one day, after tripping over it, I decided to help. Now, it was screwed to the cement. I did not have the hand strength to unscrew it. I was not allowed to access any of my dad's power tools to unscrew it. So I grabbed the only tool that I thought I could use to fix it, and it was a hammer. I went down to my toolbox because at 8 or 9, my dad and my grandfather had started to build up my tool collection. And so I had my own hand tools. And I went down and I got a hammer. Went back out to the step. I didn't tell anybody because I wanted it to be a surprise. And I began to pound the aluminum threshold flat. I worked for quite a while. To this day, I'm still not sure how Mom didn't hear that because it was very close to the kitchen where she was at. But I pounded and pounded and pounded. I remember actually sweating as I was pounding on that aluminum threshold to really flatten it because I thought it would be a great idea, that it would really be beneficial to everyone in the house because we had all tripped over it. And so finally, I finished flattening it as much as I could. And I went in and I got Mom and I said, "Hey Mom, I did something that's really going to help you out." "What's that, honey?" "Well, you've got to come see. You've got to come look at this." And so I took her out and I showed her the threshold. She was not as excited as I thought she'd be. For all of my work, all of my hard work, her response was, "Your dad's not going to like that. It's not going to be a good thing." And I remember not understanding why. And so I really did not get in a lot of trouble for it. I was trying to help. I wasn't trying to break anything. But later on, Dad showed me the reason why it wasn't such a good idea. Because now the flat threshold did not stop the water from coming in. The water was able to get right past it. And so in my wisdom as a child, I thought I was doing something that was really beneficial. And it ended up causing more problems. Has that ever happened to anybody else? You thought you were going to do something that was going to be good. And instead of it being good, instead of it working out like the grand picture that we always have in our mind, it did not go well. In fact, it ended up causing more problems. What is wisdom? Wisdom is more than knowledge. It is more than seeing a problem. Wisdom incorporates the ability to use good judgment and the ability to discern hidden qualities. What I saw in the threshold was that it was causing a problem for us to step over. What I didn't see is that it was blocking the rain. What I saw was something that was an obstacle that often got in the way. What I didn't understand is that it was preventing damage from occurring to another part of the house. See, this idea of wisdom, it incorporates knowledge, but it also includes the ability to use good judgment. Now, most 8 or 9-year-olds are not known for having good judgment, right? They're really not. As kids, we expect kids to do things that are silly. We expect kids to do things that lack in good judgment. And as I watch my kids now at ages 1.5 and almost 4, which is hard to believe, they do things that are not filled with good judgment. Jumping off the couch, pushing their sibling, taking toys just because it's fun. I know that they have a reason, but they're not filled with good judgment. And I would love to say that we magically grow out of that. But let's be honest, do we? Do we magically grow out of just doing things that are lacking in good judgment? No, we don't. We don't just grow out of it. I think it is one of the reasons that the scriptures are loaded with passages on wisdom. In fact, if you were to go through and start to look, you would find so many passages on wisdom, I think you would be amazed. Proverbs is loaded with it. You can barely read a verse in Proverbs without talking about wisdom. The story of King Solomon is loaded with wisdom. Jesus talked about wisdom. The Apostle Paul wrote about wisdom. James writes about wisdom. Wisdom is all through the scriptures, and I'm convinced it's because it has been something that throughout time many people lacked. And so it's something that we have tried to bring out and to help people grow and understand and learn. One of the hardest parts for this morning was deciding which passage on wisdom to actually use. And so I went to one of my favorites. It's James chapter 3 because it talks about 2 kinds of wisdom. You have your Bibles, James chapter 3, verses 13 to 18. And there's 2 kinds of wisdom here. We read in verse 13, "Who was wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, of the devil. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness." That's a pretty good explanation of wisdom. I am amazed at the amount of information at our fingertips. We have a lot of information available at our fingertips, don't we? I carry my phone with me everywhere. See? Everywhere. And whatever kind of phone you have, we are able to do things with it that we never dreamed of. I'm a little bit of a geek. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. I love sci-fi. I grew up watching Star Trek and Star Wars. And I was amazed in Star Trek specifically that they had instant communicators. That they could just push a button and talk. And it wasn't a big honking walkie-talkie. It was this tiny thing. We can do that now, can't we? We can text, we can call, we can send all kinds of messages instantly. And I love that. Driving home, I had the opportunity to go see my sister and brother-in-law this week. It was a great time. Driving home, my GPS took me a way that I didn't think was right. And so you know what I did? I pulled out my phone and checked it. Said, oh, I can go this way too. The amount of information, and thought I was in really good shape. But there was a day when we would have had to maybe ask someone else for help. We have so much information at our fingertips that we forget about the ability to even talk with them, the ability to even hear what they say, and we just assume that we can do it on our own. One of the struggles that we face whenever we just assume we can do it on our own is that we may get the knowledge, but we miss the rest of the context. We miss the rest of the discernment. We miss the part about the good judgment. We miss the part of how this can all fit together. Oh, Alex, you don't have to cry, buddy. It's not that bad. I mean, I don't think it's that bad.
Wait.
James gives us a really good litmus test for the wisdom that we have, for the judgment that we have, whether or not it is good, whether or not it is bad, how helpful it may be. And this litmus test, it is to be shown in our life, shown by their good life, by deeds done in humility that come from wisdom. I understand wanting to be regarded as wise and wanting one with understanding because it feels good to be complimented that way, doesn't it? Has anyone ever told you that you offered great wisdom or that you are wise? Nobody, except for Mary, who says no. Nobody else has ever had that. At some point, we have all been able to share some sort of good judgment or some sort of wisdom with somebody else, and it really can build us up. It really makes us feel good. At least it does for me. When you're able to share something that is helpful, it feels good. And I can understand, in fact, I could see how that would even be addicting, something that we would look for, something that we would want all the time. So we get that kind of affirmation from other people. It makes us feel better about ourselves when somebody compliments us, right? Nothing wrong in that. But there is a problem with living that way with that kind of wisdom. James said that we need to be really careful with this kind of wisdom because it doesn't come from heaven. It's earthly, it's unspiritual, and even it can be of the devil. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, and Rick, I don't know if you can turn it down just a little bit. I know we're struggling with our speakers. I'm getting a little ring, and thank you. Appreciate it. Where we have envy and selfish ambition, we find disorder and every evil practice. We end up thinking that we're doing something good, and we make it worse. It happens, doesn't it? We think we're doing something good, and it makes it worse. This kind of earthly wisdom, its standards and sources are earthly. And what that means by earthly standards, it's the wisdom that everybody knows, that everybody abides by. It says things like, he who has the most toys wins. Ever heard that? It says things like, second place is the first loser. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. That's also toddler wisdom. But let's be honest, does that wisdom end when we just become an adult? When we turn 18, or 21, or 35, or 45, or 50, or 65? I have seen older adults, what is mine, and what's yours is mine. It does not just end at a certain age, does it? Or one of my particular favorites. I want what I want when I want it. Anyone else like that one? Maybe not. We don't want to admit that. But let's be honest. We want what we want now, right? When we want it, on our time frame, as soon as we can. Or one of the other earthly wisdoms that I think is extremely dangerous, the ends justify the means. Does that sound like something that comes from God? No. Because all of these compromise somebody else's position to advance us. So we may have a good idea to move ourselves ahead, but if it is putting somebody else down, or it is building on top of somebody else, then it's not okay. And it's not the kind of wisdom that as Christians we need to be really living. This kind of unspiritual wisdom, it's a characteristic of the natural man. It's based upon pure survival. It's based on getting by. And there is no thought that anything more than, I just have to survive. See, if I'm only looking out for myself, and I'm only looking out for my interests, then I am really not acting like Christ, am I? And part of being a Christian, a huge part, is becoming Christ-like. And the way Christ lived, the way Christ died, the way Christ ministered, was not just for his own. It was actually very selfless. It was for others. And so this idea of only taking care of myself, only taking care of me, there is a huge problem in that. This idea of get whatever you want at no matter the cost, at no matter the expense, does not line up with Christ. It does not line up with the gospel. In verses 17 and 18, James tells us a completely different kind of wisdom. A wisdom that doesn't have selfishness. It is a wisdom that is, first of all, is pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive. Think about that in wisdom. Can submission be wisdom? Sometimes, just like Job told his friends, if you would be quiet, that would be wisdom for you. Sometimes we need to be quiet and listen. There is wisdom in that. Other people can share something that maybe we don't know. Other people might be able to share a hidden dimension that we didn't see. In fact, if I go back to the illustration of what I did as a kid with the threshold, had I talked to one of my parents or anybody else who understood the purpose of a threshold, they might have said, gee, Jamie, pounding it flat may not be a good idea. But in my infinite wisdom, I assumed that my idea was the best idea and probably only solution to it. And so I ended up making things worse. This idea of wisdom being more than just having all the answers. This kind of wisdom that comes from heaven is full of mercy and good fruit. It is impartial and it is sincere. Verse 18, peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. What a big contrast from get what you want, no matter the cost, to do this in a way of being a peacemaker. In a way that brings out the good and the beauty in others and also in ourselves. I'm convinced that our wisdom defines us. It's not just being able to have the answer. It's not just being able to find the answer. If that's the case, everything that we read on the internet would be wise because it's full of information. Is everything we read on the internet wise? I think we could go into lots of things that aren't wise. They may be knowledgeable. There may be knowledge present. It may even be, this is a shocker, correct information, right? Because there's a lot of incorrect information on the internet. It may even be correct information on the internet, but that doesn't mean that what we read there is wise. And in the same way, we can talk to people that may know the answer. It doesn't mean that the answer that they give is one full of wisdom. It doesn't mean that they're giving it so that they can help, so that they can build us up. Because I have talked with people and asked for their wisdom, only to find out later that it truly benefited them, not really me. I don't know if that's ever happened, but that's a rough lesson, isn't it? When you feel that someone is helping and yet they end up harming. And so this wisdom that James talks about is completely different because it puts others first. And instead of being full of selfish ambition and full of envy, full of strife, full of causing problems, full of just getting what I want, it actually helps others. I'm convinced that this kind of wisdom is lacking all around us. In my life, probably in your life, in the lives of our friends, because it is very easy to just make sure that our problems are taken care of. Life gets very busy. It gets very, very hard. It's okay that there's a shortage, because in James chapter 1, James actually tells us something that is really good. Chapter 1, verse 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, we should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. It's a pretty good verse, isn't it? Because if we sit here and say, you know what, I realize that at times I may have a lot of knowledge, I may know a lot of things, but I don't always do it with wisdom. I don't always do it with discernment. I don't always see the hidden stuff behind the problems. I may know a lot of things, I may read, I may look stuff up, but sometimes I fail to do it within a context that is beneficial. One of the biggest challenges that I faced in the past few years has really been learning to play guitar. I love music, I grew up with music, and because I could read music, I was pretty certain that I could do it on my own. And you know what my teaching instrument was? The internet. There's information everywhere, right? So I jumped online, and I started to find guitar playing YouTube videos. And I found some people who were really good. And they showed me what I wanted to know. But there was a problem. There was so much to it, I didn't know what I didn't know. It was more than just being able to play a chord. It was just more than being able to strum. It was, how do I hold this instrument that feels so awkward? Because as much as I checked, I didn't find anybody that talked to me about that on the internet. I didn't find anybody who could actually help me get past this just doesn't feel okay. Can you help me navigate through that? I actually had to go to somebody that's been playing guitar for a long time and has helped people learn how to do it. Successfully, I might add. That's a good thing, right? I needed more than information. I needed wisdom on how to do this. As we live our lives, as we go from day to day, we need wisdom. We need to check it. We need to make sure that it is wisdom that is good, that it is wisdom that really reflects God and nature, and that as we use it, that it actually works in that capacity. That it's not just about helping me get what I need so that I'm okay, but that it takes into consideration others. That it's considerate, that it's submissive, that it's peace-loving, that it is pure. And this litmus test helps us to understand. So when you're looking, and where do we go? I think first, one of the things we do is we pray. When we say, God, I need wisdom. God, help me in this time. Not just the knowledge to know what is right, but the wisdom to do it in a way that is good. And then, I think we can talk to people. Because there are many people around us who have walked similar roads, right? People around us who have been down similar journeys, and they understand where we're at. We can get wisdom from others. And I think the third point is that we can actually reflect back through our life. We can look at the things that we have done and trying to discern where the wisdom has been and where we have lacked in some good judgment. It's okay to look back through life and say, I made a mistake. It is okay to look back through life and say, boy, I did not use good judgment here. I did not use wisdom here. It's okay to say that. In fact, I think it's really helpful. What's not okay is to assume that everything that I have ever done is right. And that everything, the way I do everything, is the best way it could ever be done. That is not okay. That will lead us to a very bad spot. And so as we move from here, one of the questions that I always look for is, where do we go from here? Well, I hope to challenge you. I want to challenge you that as you go through everyday circumstances, to pause and to find the wisdom in it. Because it counts. It is something that we may use just in that moment. We could use it down the road, or we may be able to share it. And to look at the discernment, to look at the hidden things that we see, and to understand that the way we live and interact is more than just knowledge. I'm convinced that our wisdom, this idea of having knowledge but seeing what is behind, what is hidden, what may be revealed, really defines our character. I loved what Brian shared with the kids about the owl. We all regard owls as wise, right? I've never even talked to an owl. Have you? The only owl that I really remember talking was the one with the Tootsie Roll Pops, and his wisdom was to bite it because it takes too long to lick to the center, right? We really should value wisdom. It helps us to grow, to learn, and it makes a difference in our life and the lives of those around us. So as we close today, I would ask you to start taking that inventory. Start looking at some of your choices. Start looking at the times that wisdom has been evident and that wisdom has been lacking. And say, God, help me to learn. Help me to grow from this moment, because the goal is to grow to become more Christ-like, not to just repeat the same thing over and over and over. Let's close in prayer. Dear God, we just thank you for this time together today. God, we thank you for wisdom. We thank you that it is a gift from you, that it's something that you reveal in our life. God, I just ask that you would help us to grow in our wisdom. Help us to become wise. Help us to live in a way where we're not just concerned about ourselves, but we are concerned about others. And that the wisdom, the knowledge, everything that we have, that it's not just used so that we get what we want. It is used to make a difference for good. God, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for the way you love us. And we thank you for the wisdom that you share with us so generously. God, help us to be humble enough to ask. Help us to not be so proud that we can't say we made a mistake.